Ferdinando de Magalhães left the safety of Europe exactly 500 years ago. Now, this man, at the time of his journey, when he set out to go west, southwest, this was the limit of the known world. So this is actually the coast of Brazil, Caribbean, the West Indies, as Columbus called them. They are still called this way today in English. And you see, this was the limit of the known world. And of course, this was all about change with the voyage of Magalhães, who opened the way, the strait. What strikes us marine scientists, oceanographers, there are hundreds of them in this room, is that these are somehow our ancestors, those navigators. They didn't know for the majority how to swim. They were facing horrific storms. And they lost many ships' lives. And so it is fitting also to move now, to move ahead. About 400 years later, another prodigal son from Portugal, the poet and great writer Fernando Pessoa, was walking around with his famous hat, the streets of Portugal, and he had this to say in a famous poem on all those lost lives. O salty sea, how much of your salt is tears from Portugal? Because we crossed you, so many mothers wept, so many brides to be never married, etc., etc. Let's move to this place and time. Let's move today, jumping ahead. This is our commission, okay? It extends, as you know, from the Atlantic shores of Portugal and Morocco all the way to Vladivostok on the Pacific Ocean. We are a big commission because we cover so many latitudes and so many different cultures. This is reflected in the way we work, in the way we interact. And that's why it's so important that we move now west, clearly, to Portugal, which joined us 15 years ago exactly. During this week, we are going to cover quite a number of issues. They are all contained in the pocket book, which marks the days of this Congress. And as the mayor was saying, you are going to find words that like microplastics, invasions, also geohazards. We are very concerned also about issues regarding legal disputes between neighboring countries, the evolution of the law of the sea, marine policies, hand in hand with our marine scientists. It's very new, very important. And marine litter, ocean health, above all, Atlantic-Mediterranean exchanges. This is a running theme of the week. This had to be. How could it be otherwise? This is what eddies, microscale circulation looks like outgoing the Mediterranean Sea, moving all the way westward. And you also have incoming Atlantic waters on top of that. So you have an exchange of everything there, of chemicals, contaminants, warm waters coming out of the Mediterranean going very far west, and up north, going to warm up your shores and your waters. Also, species going both ways, more and more of them coming from the Indo-Pacific Ocean. We have atlases on this. We have a lot of work on this, the changing scene of the fish community, for example. We had an atlas produced 20 years ago for the first time of exotic fish in the Mediterranean Sea, mostly from the Red Sea. Now we have to change completely the list of the names for the second edition, 20 years later, with 100 new species of fish that have come in the interval. This is the outflowing, the temperature raised linked to the outflowing Mediterranean waters into the Atlantic, and with increasing heat of the Mediterranean Sea, that will clearly have an impact. There are other reasons to collaborate strongly between our research communities. Geohazards. The Mediterranean Sea, particularly in the eastern basin, is prone to tsunamis. It's the third sea impacted by tsunami worldwide. because it is a meeting point of 3 plates, 3 continental plates. So that generates a lot of course, seism, earthquake, huge waves, with disastrous consequences. And you, unfortunately, also in Portugal, you have been hit by a series of disastrous earthquakes. Okay, we all know about the 18th century destruction of Lisbon. We have a very active community of geoscientists. They need to work together with yours. We have many experience to share on this, submarine volcanoes, etc., etc. Now, another problem we share in common is the importance of fishery and often the overfishing, which has devastating consequences for fin fishes, demersal, and also deep sea fish with the trawling, devastating food webs, all right? With consequences like this. So there are bycatch of whales, cetaceans, turtles, etc., etc. These animals play a very important role in marine food chains, marine food webs. They are very connected. If you lose that part of the engine, you can doubt that the Ferrari will continue to work nicely. Another consequences of this destruction of food webs, overfishing, destruction of coastal habitats, contamination, is this. Not only are the seas going to be more and more plastic, as the mayor said, they are already more and more gelatinous because of the blooming of many, many species and population of jellyfish. Now, some jellyfish are inoffensive. You can even touch them on the head. Others, half of them are toxic, and some are lethal. You know that, Portuguese man of war in the Atlantic. We have Ropiloma nomadica on the Levantine Basin, which goes in swarms and can be just lethal. Okay, 1 or 2 burns and you are dead. And we have, as you well know, a big program on jellyfish blooms surveillance. Now we are into our 5th consecutive years of data. So what's important to us is a big change. So you see Western Mediterranean on top, Central Med, Eastern Mediterranean. These are the records of hundreds of scientists every week. The Western Med, the colors indicate different species blooming. In the Western Med, you mostly have Pelagia, etc. In the Central, Rhizostoma in red. In the Eastern Med, you have a cocktail of things with Mniopsis and other things. And the key point here is that what has changed in the past half dozen years is that you now find blooms somewhere all year round. All year round, not just in the heat of summer, sometimes every 12 years or 13 years or 17 years, every year, everywhere. Same thing for the Black Sea, which we also cover in our perimeter. This time, this is mostly Aurelia and Mniopsis species which are dominating. So this, to make a point that when I arrived on the University of California to start my PhD, that year, this was a familiar sight on campus. No, that is not me. It's not. No, I never went that far. Not on campus. No. I call that the last years of the age of innocence. Really, I was fortunate to share that. And now, same place, Malibu. Actually, a bit north from where I was, northern Los Angeles, November 2018. Big fires. This is not a movie a poster. This is a photograph of people leaving the coastal highway, if you know California, rushing out of this. Huge fires and many houses destroyed, all right? And I just took this shot as a symbolic one. You in Portugal also have not been spared. We know how many fires you have experienced in the past years. And this is now clear that we live in a chaotic world. It even hits, when it hits the cover of Time magazine. This is last week issue. Our 2050, how the Earth survived. Okay? This is no longer science fiction. This is what's ahead of us. The end of innocence is now. Clearly. We have to take stock. We have to learn about this. These are familiar scene now. More and more storms, more and more episodes like this. And this is the future if we don't change the course now. This was taken, this shot, actually it's this year in May 2019. So sorry, it's a typo, I made a typo. We are on a fjord here. It's a scientist from Denmark, they're physicists, and they're picking up they're going to their station on the other side of the fjord. So they took their trolley and the dogs, and they're crossing the fjord, except that the top layer of the ice has melted, because it was unusually warm spring in Greenland. It was even hotter than here in May. And these kind of sites are going to be more and more frequent, and this is crazy. So world leaders, starting with the two head of states in this room today, take stock. They were in New York, your president, our president. They were in that room on 23 September, just 10 days ago, to address the issue, of starting to reach a carbon-neutral planet by 2030 or before, starting to put actions not to exceed 1.5 degree rise. And already with 1.5 degree rise, we are sure to have more and more extreme events every year already. Now, scientists like us, ocean atmosphere scientists, they know that if we go to 2 degree rise, we will have 20 times more frequent extreme events of the sort we have now every year by the end of the century, if we stop at plus 2 degrees. So situation is critical. And again, I am facing some exceptional men, because only 20 countries out of 189 as the United States pledged to do everything in their power to not exceed 1.5 degrees in their capacity, and to reach a carbon neutral status also in their country. We hope that others will follow suit. So, what can scientists do about this in face of this chaos? Well, first of all, this is a time where we never needed scientists, good scientists, more than now. We never needed political leaders and actors from the civil society to interact with scientists, and for scientists to speak louder and more clearly to them. There is so much information around, so much. We cannot read every new scientific papers that's coming out every day. So how can the public distinguish science from fake news? Scientists from pseudo-scientists who are spending their time on radios and TV while real scientists are working? How can we distinguish the original from the copy? We all need to take action on this, all sectors of society. We need to change our mindset. We need to forge new partnerships. And this is why we are so pleased this week to welcome some sponsors from civil societies. And I'm again very grateful to the ambassador of the Prince in Portugal, Enrique de Polignac, to open doors for me to meet with these people. They are here with us today. They make also this event possible. And they have ocean programs, they have actions going on, and we need to hear from them. We need to hear from the business community how they are taking on this challenge. We have a panel on that tomorrow. This is an example of how we handle our cooperation with civil society for many years already. Our Jelly Watch program, which you saw, depends on the contributions from many, many diverse fishermen. And all their information is filtered by our specialist scientists and biologists. Same thing with regard to our new actions with fishermen in general, where to locate new MPAs, marine protected areas, for how long, What actions could we take locally? Do we observe jellyfish blooms far away in the open ocean or just in coastal waters? We don't know because we don't have the remote sensing sensor already is ready to catch that. This is difficult to track bags of waters in the waters, like Medusa. So one of our latest monographs, our white paper, which are 200 pages thick, they contain recommendations on this. We had these workshops together between fishery scientists, socioeconomists, and fishers associations. It's very hard to get these people in the room, and we were convinced that what is critically needed now is to break the mistrust between those two sectors. Fishermen don't talk very often to fishery experts, and fishery experts don't want to talk to the fishermen. So we showed successful case studies, examples of that, in that book, which you can find on our web pages again. You can download that for free. This is what we call cooperative research with civil societies, and we are one of the pioneers for that. We need to empower women too. You take, for example, the fishery sector. In our region of the world, in particular, this is a very male-dominated sector. This may explain, because there's too much testosterone in fisheries, that it often leads to local conflicts with neighboring countries. So we are urging also fisher associations and local powers to help women get access to leading position in that sector. In our panel of, I think it will be on Thursday morning, you will have examples of that, how we are doing this in Morocco, for example, or we are working on that. Okay, this is one of my last slides. In our own organization, we took many steps for the past 20 years to empower women in our committees, in our own headquarter team, all right? You see, when we started to have statistics on our own congresses, which started back in 1919, there was zero women at the Congress in Venezia 1926. The situation remains the same for 30 years, until our Congress in Istanbul, 1956, we had 5% women in the Congress. And then, a few years later, 18 years later, 21%. Congress of Palma, 34%. We broke the barrier 9 years ago, 50% in our Congress in Venezia. And now, 60% of women in our Congress. This will be clear, this will be seen. So I encourage scientists to take, and political leaders and business leaders to take some altitude above the fray, above the noise. And let's go back to the man with the hat, Nadop Shore. This is what was found in his posthumous book, the Book of Disquiet. We should wash our destiny the way we wash our body and change life the way we change clothes. It's about time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I will ask the President